So let's bring everything together then. Here we're asked to sketch the graph of y equals x minus 1, x plus 3. And the question says, show the points of intersection with the x-axis and the y-axis and the turning point. Okay, so let's break this down. We know what the points of intersection with the x-axis is called. That's called finding the roots, okay? The point where the curve passes through the x-axis, that intersection point is one of the roots. And the y-axis, we call this the y-intercept. You can see I've written y-intercept down here. We're also been asked to find the turning point. And so aside from these three things, there's one other thing we need to know in order to draw this graph. We know it's a quadratic graph because if you were to expand these brackets, the highest order term you would get would be an x squared. So it's got this x squared in it. And we recall that an x squared quadratic graph is either going to be a U shape or it's going to be an N shape. So we just need to decide, what do we think? Is this going to be a U-shaped graph or an N-shaped graph? And if you remember, it's the coefficient of x squared that matters. So say we expanded these brackets, we would get x squared as our first term, and it would be a positive x squared. And so for that reason, it's going to be a U shape. Now, I did do a video where we went through whether it's going to be a U shaped or an N shape. So take a look at that video if you've forgotten that. In this case, it's a U shape. Now, the roots we can find by solving this equation. Okay, so we set y to be 0. Why are we saying y is 0? Well, the point in which the curve crosses the x-axis is the point in which y is equal to 0. In other words, right there on the axis. So if I do a very quick sketch, something like this, the roots are where we cross the x-axis, and the value of y at this point is 0. Remember, the y-axis is this. So this is negative y, this is positive y. Right here on the x-axis is when y is 0. So if this times this equals 0, that suggests that either x minus 1 is equal to 0 or x plus 3 is equal to 0. One of those two things must be true for this to equal 0. And so what take away 1 is 0? 1. 1 take away 1 is 0. What plus 3 is 0? Negative 3. Negative 3 plus 3 is 0. So these are our roots, okay? So in this case, x is passing through. So my rough and ready sketch looks all right, really. It passes through the x-axis at negative 3, and it passes through the x-axis on its way back up at 1. Okay, the y-intercept. If you ever need to find the y-intercept is the point in which x is 0. Okay, so it's the point in which x is 0. So what we do is we say let x be 0, and let's substitute it into our equation. So we've got y equals x minus 1, x plus 3. Let's substitute x is 0. Well, this bracket just becomes 0 take 1 times 0 add 3. So what's minus 1 times 3? It's negative 3. So the y-intercept then is going to be negative 3. Okay, so I think what I want to do is actually sketch this, and we'll talk about the turning point in a second. So let's sketch this graph. Let's sketch this graph here. So let's just do a rough and ready sketch. Let's talk about what we know. We know the roots are negative 3. So let's call this point here negative 3. And let's call this point 1. And we know it's going to be a U shape. And we know it crosses the y-axis at minus 3. So let's maybe say this is about minus 3. And again, you draw this freehand. This is a curve, so you're not going to be using a ruler. And let's note these points down. So here we're crossing the x-axis at the point 1. So this is going to be the point 1, 0. This root here is going to be the point -3, 0. And the y-intercept we've just worked out is -3, so that's the point 0, -3. Okay, so the very final thing that we want is the turning point. Okay, so the turning point is what we're going to work out now. The first thing we'll note is that there is a symmetry here. There is a symmetry of a parabola, and so the x value is going to be halfway between each of these roots. So the number that's halfway between -3 and 1. Okay, so if you imagine coming in, if we go 1 this way, we get to 0, -2, -1. The point -1 is going to line up with this x coordinate here at the bottom. Okay, so I've just used symmetry just to sort of see where that x value is going to be. So we know the turning point, the x value is going to be -1. Okay, and if you're not trying to find the distance halfway between two roots, what you can do is you can do -3 add 1 divided by 2. Okay, so that's how you find the number halfway between two numbers. So halfway between -3 and 1, you just add them up and divide by 2, which if you do, you'll get -1. Okay, so what you can do now is substitute this information back into your equation, which I've just lost off the top of the screen, but back into this equation here. So x minus 1, x plus 3. Let's substitute. Okay, so we've got x minus 1, x plus 3. I'm just rewriting the equation from the question. We're going to use x equals -1. So that just becomes -1 take 1 times -1 plus 3. Okay, so this is going to tell us our value of y. -1 times -1 is +1. Oh, sorry, not negative, not multiply. It's -1 take 1, so that's going to be -2. Apologies. -2 times, and here we've got -1 plus 3. So -1 plus 3 would be 2. And so now we've got -2. I'll make that into cross times. -2 times 2 would be -4. So this point here is going to be the point -1, -4.